Hi everyone. Look, actually made it like on time for once. It's still, the actual minute I should be here. Progress. Hey. Oh, how is everyone? Are we all good? So, yeah, a lot going on at the moment. Everything is like really, really, really manic at the moment. So, not sure how things are going to for the channel for the time being. So basically, my landlady is not renewing my contract. So I need to be out of this place by mid-May. So I'm not sure how much time I'm going to be able to actually do stuff or what's going to happen after that, because it's this whole thing, and I may end up having to go into a hostel for a little bit until I get a council house. It's this whole thing. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen, basically. So there's that. I'm going to try and do videos, but I'm obviously not going to bother a lot, considering real life issues. Real life always comes first. So yeah, but there's today, and I'm here today with stories, even though they're incredibly last minute, and my friends helped me find them. But what? Yeah, thank you, Super Ghost and Brainless, for helping me. You rock. And I'm going to get started. Let me get the things up. So I've found some part twos and such to some of the stories I found before. So I was thinking of reading some of those. So which one is this? Hey, you Shadow, sweetie. I'm so glad you could make it. Right. One sec. I forgot to share this to a person. I need a person to share it to. Sorry, I am an absolute fucking mess today. Why? Fuck it. Is this it? This is part one. So I'm going to read part one and then part two. Because, recap, basically. I cannot remember how long ago it was I read part one. So I'm going to read part one and part two. And then next week, part three. Why am I getting so many notifications all of a sudden? I shouldn't be popular enough to have people messaging me about shit. Yes, hun, could you do me a massive favour and send me the link to this video, please, in my DMs? Thank you. So, the previous tenant of my new flat left a survival guide. I'm not sure I want to live here anymore. I moved in with my boyfriend yesterday. We've been together for 5 years now, and we're old and wise enough to settle down and finally leave our parents' houses. He just turned 24 and I'm 22. He's the love of my life. His name is Jamie, and I couldn't be happier to be living with him. Thank you, Brainless, and yes, it's for my friend. When we decided to make the leap, we spent 2 months looking at flats and houses. We couldn't afford to buy yet, so renting was our only option. But the prices were astronomical. For our budget, we would have been lucky to get a box room and a stove. Jamie works for a local 24-hour fast food restaurant, and I'm training to be a teacher. The early stages of training don't pay much, and I owe a lot in student loans, so finances are tough. We had almost given up hope until we found our flat. It was nothing special, but to us it was a place, a spacious 2-bedroom apartment with views of a city, a balcony and local conveniences. It was in a tower block in a not so nice area, but neither of us had been wealthy growing up. We weren't fussy, just grateful to be together. The advert was sweetened by the deposit fee option and open-ended tenancy. The landlord was happy to sign a 5-year contract if we wanted. That sort of thing never happens in the city. We were told that, along with no deposit, we also had no inspections, but would be liable to pay for any damage when we ended the tenancy. I'd never heard of anything like it. We knew that for our budget and location, we weren't going to get any better. We snapped the place up, not even bothering to view it. It felt like our only chance. Moving day rolled around quickly, and yesterday we got the keys to our first home together. It was such a strange feeling. The day was chaos, getting our stuff in and up in the lift. We were flat number 42 on the 7th floor. The items we couldn't get in the lift had to be taken up all the stairs by the removal men. I think they were grateful we weren't any higher, but I wish we had been able to give them a better tip. In the evening, we settled down on our second-hand sofa, given to us by a cousin of a friend, and watched some TV. We smoked cigarettes on the balcony, looking at the park, and fell asleep on our mattress on the floor super early because we had no energy to put the bed together yet, and Jamie had work at a hideous time in the morning. We slept soundly last night. I felt safe and happy. I don't think that feeling is coming back anytime soon, and it's all due to the note I found this morning. I found it in the kitchen, having a coffee hours after Jamie had left for his early shift at work. It was in one of the cupboards that were fixed to the wall. There were a bunch of useful items from the previous tenant. Spare keys to the flat, a set of tiny keys that locked and unlocked the windows, necessary for those with kids this high up, spare smoke alarm batteries, and a folded up piece of paper. The note was handwritten with new occupants of flat 42 in beautiful cursive on the blank side. I opened it up and sat down to read. I can't really describe it to you, so I'm going to copy it below. Dear new occupier, Firstly, welcome to your new home. I lived here before you for 35 years with my husband. Unfortunately, he had an incident at home recently that I'd rather not discuss that claimed his life. My sister has decided I can't keep up with the demands of this property and has insisted that I move in with her and her husband. I was reluctant at first, but the stairs do start to kill me at my age, and without Bernie, it's filled with sadness. Anyways, when you've lived somewhere for as long as I have, it feels like a person that you know. You understand its personality and what makes it tick. I thought it was proper I thought it was probably pertinent that I impart some of that knowledge on you. It's a wonderful home, honestly. I've lived here through the best and worst years, and leaving it behind is very emotional. But if you are to survive and get the best out of it, then there are some steps you need to follow. Number 1, the landlord will never bother you. He doesn't visit, call, or communicate in any way, but will make sure you pay your rent in a timely fashion always. I have only dealt with him once in 35 years, and let's just say I never missed another rent day. Any repairs required, you speak to the agent you rented the place with. Do not use the communal lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m. Just don't do it. This step is vital if you are to have a happy life here. It really is life or death. Don't do it. This has cost me and many others in this building greatly, and I would rather not elaborate on why you shouldn't do this. Just please don't do it. I cannot stress this enough. When you hear the strange animal noises coming from flat 48, don't question it. Mr. Prentice lives there, and he's a lovely chap. Don't be afraid to say hello to him in the corridor or the stairs. He's old school, so he never risks the lift. But whatever you do, don't check on him when you hear the noises. You'll know when you hear them. 4. If you ever come across a window cleaner on the balcony, ignore him. He may seem like the nicest fella you've ever had trying to sell you something at the door, but it really is best that you don't engage. He will go away if you ignore him, but he tries pretty hard the first few times, so you'll need some resilience. Whatever you do, do not offer him anything. No money, no hot drink. Number 5. Don't communicate with any neighbour who claims to come from flat 65 to flat 72. These flats suffered a fire in the 80s that devastated the whole floor. All the residents died in their homes. The building was mostly council owned at the time, and they never bothered to renovate the flats. They've been empty ever since, but every now and then someone will knock at your door claiming to live in one of these flats and ask to borrow some sugar. They will seem entirely average, but you must shut and lock the door immediately. I installed 2 extra security bolts to avoid these fuckers. I don't like to swear at my age, but they really are fuckers. Number 7. Simple one for you here. Keep a weapon in each room. Sometimes you follow all these steps and something still slips through the net. Better be safe than sorry. The building has a committee that will try and get you to join. It's one of those neighbours groups about improving living conditions for all residents. It's a nice group, and the lady who runs it, Terry, from flat 26, is a fantastic neighbour. By all means, get involved, but I won't recommend babysitting Terry's 2 children. She'll ask you, because the poor woman needs a break, but if you accept, don't say I didn't warn you. Stray, hairless cats sometimes roam in the hallway. I know they're supposedly a special, expensive breed, but they don't belong to anyone. They're mostly harmless, but don't pick them up. Not unless you see one of those neighbours that claim to live in 65 to 72. Then grab a cat and lock it inside with you. It'll burn your skin a little, but the cats are friendly, and I won't want to see them hurt. Aww. There is no way to fix a damp patch on the ceiling in the bedroom. Sometimes it will turn a deep crimson and look quite concerning, but please try not to be alarmed. It doesn't drip, it doesn't get any bigger, and it's been there longer than I have. The landlord won't budge on it, according to the agents. I flagged it many times, even called the police the first night it changed colour, but it was a waste of time, and it will be for you too. It's best to ignore it. Number 11. You can trust the postman. His name is Ian Flanders, and he's been the postman since before I moved in. He has his own key to the main door and delivers the post to the door every morning at 8:54. I can't include everything here, or it will become a novel, but if you have any questions, Ian will help you. And number 12. Finally, the first few weeks are the worst. You'll feel like you've made a mistake. I'm sure reading this you already do. But if you can get through the first few weeks, it really is a lovely block to live in. Every property has its quirks, and this one is a little extra special. But you can truly be happy here if you just take my advice. I wish you all the best. I really do. Yours truly, Prudence Hemmings. In the grand scheme of things, that's not exactly like... It's a lot, but it's not a lot. Like, yeah, is she related to the person from the gas station? Now, those were some rules that were like, holy shit. I don't really know what to think after reading the note. Hopefully it was some sort of joke, but the agent had said the previous tenant was an elderly lady, and I can't see anyone named Prudence Hemmings attempting to play a practical joke on someone they've never met. There were also parts of the note I couldn't disprove. There was indeed a large damp patch above the bed that me and Jamie had already discussed reporting. Not crimson, but it definitely existed. I had also commented on the beautiful Sphinx cats roaming the halls as we were moving in. I started to get seriously freaked out. This is our dream. Our beautiful little home had just become a source of fear and confusion. I checked the time and it was 9:14. Damn it. Out of time to catch Postman Ian. When I opened the door to check, sure enough, 2 letters addressed to a Mrs. Hemmings sat on the doorstep. At about 11:15, my worst fears were truly confirmed when a friendly middle-aged man carrying window cleaning equipment knocked on my balcony door. I ignored him. I didn't want to take the risk until I'd spoken to Jamie and showed him the note. I'd texted him already to rush home. I felt bad as the man rapped his knuckles against the door for over 10 minutes, but honestly, the longer it went on, the more terrified I was. My windows were sparkling, and due to our lack of curtains, I couldn't even hide from his gaze. I felt so exposed. He stayed for a total of 30 minutes, exactly, and never once did he stop looking at me or knocking. He shouted the occasional ultra-friendly line or humble request for a beverage in the heat through the door, but I did my best to avoid eye contact. When he finally left, I looked outside every window in the flat, but I couldn't see him on any other balconies or see any equipment suggesting he was around. He had vanished completely. Jamie still hadn't texted me back. He must have been having a rough shift. It was a Friday, and they were always busy. It wasn't often that he didn't reply. He was due home in around an hour anyway. I read the note probably hundreds of times, over and over, torturing myself, reading it. I tortured myself reading it for the next hour, desperately waiting for Jamie to come through the door to tell me it was all crazy and I should relax. I hoped for that so much. But Jamie never came. His shift should have finished around midday, but by 2 p.m. he still wasn't home. I panicked, I cried, I left over 100 voice messages on his phone, but got nowhere. I finally decided it had been long enough that calling his work wouldn't embarrass him, and his boss told me that he never turned up for his shift. I thought about it, what could have happened, and then it hit me. Jamie's shift starts at 4 a.m. today. He would have left the flat at 3:15 and taken the lift downstairs. I don't know what to do. I tried to convince myself it was all just a big joke. Maybe Jamie wrote the note and got his boss in on it. A voice in my head kept telling me that he couldn't write like that if he tried. But I had to attempt to fool myself. It's getting late and he still isn't home. What if it's all true? I think we made a big mistake. And part 2. So, part 2. So much has happened in the last 24 hours. I'm so stressed and I've barely slept since I discovered that Jamie was missing. It's starting to make me feel a little twitchy, but I thought I'd better update you guys. I was overwhelmed by all the suggestions you gave me and have taken more than a few of them on board. I'm definitely going to be getting a huge planter full of sage for the balcony, and I did spill a little salt in my doorway. I'm sorry to disappoint, but that didn't help at all. There's nothing I'm following quite like Miss Hemming's rules. I've followed them to the letter so far, and lo and behold, I'm still alive. That's not to say it hasn't been tough. I'll start from the beginning. I was going crazy, and a few hours after my last post, Jamie still hadn't returned. He had been gone for almost 24 hours. His work have called me multiple times. I don't know what to say, so I keep ghosting the calls. I was bang in the middle of the danger time when I decided checking the lift had to be my first step. But I wasn't going to break the rule. I waited. I waited desperately for 3:34 to come. And I'm ashamed to say that when it did, I remained paralysed to our sofa for almost half an hour before I found the nerve to leave the flat. It was 4:02 when I finally reached the lift. The lift in this building is old and rickety. It hasn't been updated in a very long time, and it has likely been here as long as the building. Its big, clunky buttons stared back at me as I glared at them, hoping for some sort of answer or clue. My heart thumped, and I was overcome with a feeling of dread, but nothing came of any of it. It was hopeless. I stepped inside the lift and rode it down. I rode it up and down a few floors and searched the entire perimeter with my phone torch for anything I could find. I found nothing. Jamie had completely disappeared. Sobbing and exhausted, I rode back to floor 7 and turned my key in flat 42. The perfect home that felt anything but home at that point. I sat at the cheap, flat-pack dining table we'd managed to put together on moving day and cried, my hands shaking as I held my phone. I was flitting between reading all of your comments and contemplating calling the police for an hour. But I decided to call my friend Georgia instead. I needed a real person here. Things were so crazy, I wasn't sure the police would be able to help with what little information I had. But I knew I needed to sound it out with someone. One sec. Sorry, one sec. Sorry about that. I was just checking on the little one. She's got a bit of a cough, bless her. Okay, where was I? Okay. I'll spare you the details again, but I told her everything. She promised she'd be with me in the late morning. She had to take her younger brother to school. I waited anxiously, not before arming every room, exactly as advised. Before I knew it, I looked at the clock and it was 8:23. I had around half an hour until the postman was due. There was no way I was missing him today. I stood by the door, looking vacantly at the wood, like someone in a film who was possessed. The exhaustion was really setting in, but Jamie was all I could think of. Pure adrenaline was keeping me standing. At 8:52, I opened the door. The next 2 minutes were, the next 2 minutes were the longest of my life. But when I saw him, a wave of relief swept over my entire body. Right on cue, 8:54. The postman, Ian Flanders, stood in front of me, a smile that barely hid his concern covering Ian Flanders stood in front of me, a smile that barely hid his concern covering his younger than expected face. He didn't look old enough to have been the postman for over 35 years, but I didn't look old enough to have been... What? My God. Sorry. But I was too distracted by the answers that I needed from him to care. You must be the new tenant, he stated, but in a way that sounded like a question. I struggled with my answer, so I got straight to the point. Mrs. Hemmings left me a note. She said speak to you if... Can I come in, dear? I think we need to chat. I ushered Ian in, my hands still shaking as I flapped them down in the direction of the sofa, gesturing for him to sit down. I shoved the now slightly crumpled note into his lap and waited. I'm glad Prue still thinks that highly of me. I will miss that old girl, he said with a coy smile as he reached the end of the note. Can you help me or not? I had no time for his ego trip over a moved-on neighbour. I can help, but I can't stop for long, so it will have to be quick. I've walked these halls delivering the post for 40 years. I've seen it all. Everything Prue's mentioned and more. What do you need to know? He said. Ian was nothing like I expected. The note made me feel like he was going to be a kindly old grandpa type figure. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The postman Ian spoke with a thick city accent and wore a heavy gold chain around his tattooed neck. He had dyed his greying hair boot polish black. Hey, Sydney love, you're right. His demeanour was thankfully non-threatening, but extraordinarily cocky. He was the sort of man I imagined in a betting shop, rubbing his grubby hands over notes as he bragged over a win. He didn't ask as he lit a cigarette in my living room. I didn't question it. We would usually smoke outside, but I wasn't going to argue over technicalities. I grabbed a bowl for the ash and lit one too. Let's start with the things in the lift. My boyfriend is missing. He took the lift at 3:15 over 24 hours ago. He hadn't got this note yet. I haven't heard from him since. I need to get him back, I barked at him, as if the louder I spoke, the more I could influence his answer. But nothing prepared me for what he said. His skin turned pale, and his harsh-looking face became more sympathetic as he explained. He's dead, love. Forget about him now. Only one person has ever come back from that lift at that time of night, and it was Prue herself. After witnessing it, those creatures ripping their victim apart, poor Prue was traumatized. Your boy's gone. Let go and follow the rules. He was blunt, but I could tell he felt sorry for me. There must be something I can do, I pleaded. There are things I've heard to bring back those who are lost, but I've never seen solid proof they work. It would be irresponsible of me to tell you to do something that might get you killed too. It's nice here, honest. Just get over him and live the status quo. Sorry if I sound harsh. I don't mean to, but you seem like a decent young lady, and I don't want to see you go too soon. I asked about what Mrs. Hemmings had seen in the lift, and if they were sure what happened to all who entered it. I refused to believe that Jamie was dead. There had to be something I could do, and if I knew what I was dealing with, I could be better prepared. It was awful what happened. I wasn't there, but this is what I was told. Little Lila was a cute kid. She used to open the door and give me a tip when I delivered the post. She was Prue's granddaughter. Lila was her son's little girl, and that night she was staying over for the first time. Prue felt confident she could protect Layla from all the strange things that happen here. She was wrong. Little Lila had a problem with sleepwalking, and she took a trip into the hallway at about 1:30 in the morning. Prue took a little too long to notice the sound. She had heard was the front door, and by the time she reached the lift, she saw the creatures dragging Layla's limbs away from her body. She tried to fight them, even killed one, but she couldn't save the little girl. I was hysterical, imagining Jamie's fate. What are the creatures? Have you ever actually seen them? I asked. No one really knows what they are. There's something to do with the building and all its quirks. No one ever sees them elsewhere. We don't know where they came from, just that they're here. I've seen them a few times over the years, usually when new neighbours have left biscuits for the cats and dogs, or haven't disposed of food waste properly. They're curious little creatures, mostly harmless, out of the hours Prue warned you about. But if they're fed, they can. If they're not fed, I guess they can become vicious, looking for more food. That's why you have to bin all your scraps or hide them or pack them or whatever. Just don't leave them out and don't use the lift at those times, and you're safe from the little creatures. They're a little smaller than humans, but they're a similar shape. They come with grotesque rodent-like features, and they are far larger than any rodent could be. Like rodent children, I suppose. They have 2 sharp rows of teeth per jaw and are constantly hungry. When they eat, they crunch down in a violent and disgusting way, dripping spittle everywhere. Prue said she could hear her granddaughter's bones shatter in those jaws. He went pale at the thought of that, but continued. When they first arrived in the building, there were hundreds. It caused pandemonium amongst the residents. We lost the residents of more than 30 of the individual homes, but the residents fought back and managed to kill all but the strongest minority of them. The creatures left over were incredibly dangerous and seemingly impossible to eradicate. So the residents struck a deal that they will be left unharmed and allowed to live in the building in return for the residents' safety at all times. But if anyone wanders into the lift between 1:11 and 3:33 a.m., they're fair game. This time frame is the period the creatures are at the most frenzied, and restricting them to the lift was safer for all parties. God help anyone who encounters them during those hours. They've been here ever since, claimed a lot of unsuspecting people avoiding the stairs, but nothing like when they first arrived. A few got put down for not holding their end of the bargain, but we hadn't had an incident outside of the lift in years. Count yourself lucky you missed that crisis. Everything here's pretty peaceful right now. I'm sorry about your boyfriend. I really have to go. I'm late for my round. He scrawled his phone number on a bit of paper and handed it to me. Emergencies only. I don't like to be bothered. You can't go. The note said you would help me, I exclaimed. And I will, he snapped back. When there's something I can help with. I can't resurrect your boyfriend, and I don't like being late delivering the post. I will see you soon, love. I was in shock. I can't believe what I was hearing, and I couldn't believe he was leaving me after all the information overload and the small ray of hope he had lit inside me and then squashed. I'll call the police, I shouted, desperate to feel as if I was solving this somehow. You can try if you want, sighed Ian, as he opened the door to leave. It just aggravates the creatures, and it isn't going to bring your boy back. Mr. Patience hates it when the police come too. If you want to get any sleep in the next week, then avoid it. Wait a week, report him missing, and learn to adapt to life here, love, or you'll be dead in days. And with that, he shut the door behind him. I opened it again. I had so much more to ask, but he was gone. No sign of him anywhere. Maybe it was me losing my mind. I might be imagining all these things, but no matter how much I willed it, the note was still there, and Jamie still wasn't. Georgia arrived not long after Ian had left. I, of course, asked if she had seen him in the corridor and tried to affirm to myself that he was real. But she hadn't. She looked at me worried and held me as I sobbed and told her that the postman had said about Jamie and the creatures. I wasn't sure she believed me. Even as she read the note, she looked sceptical. If she was sceptical, I wouldn't have blamed her. But she had always been supportive. She sat with me for hours while I sobbed, heartbroken. I was so conflicted as to what to do. It felt insane that I hadn't contacted anybody, but this note had turned out to be accurate so far, and if the postman was to be trusted, then I should wait. Georgia had been my best friend for many years. She stuck up for me when I was too scared to do it for myself, and had always been the brave one of the two of us. I felt safe around her. So after hours of crying and despairing at the way my life had changed in a matter of days, I finally decided to take a nap. It was early evening, and Georgia was watching some TV, just there for me if I needed her. Hey, Global Mum Love. Oh, sorry, you're right, Rissa. Not really paying attention to the chat. Despite the deprivation, I struggled to fall asleep. I tried to imagine Jamie's arms around me, but it became more a painful reminder that they probably never will be again. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity of staring at the damp patch over the ceiling, I drifted off. About 3 hours ago, I woke up staring at the goddamn damp patch on the ceiling and could hear chatting in the living room. I jumped out of bed towards it. Georgia was on the sofa with a middle-aged looking woman both nursing a cup of tea in the matching mugs that Jamie had gotten me as a moving present. My blood boiled, but it wasn't their fault. I cleared my throat to get their attention. "Oh, Katie! This is Natalia. She lives upstairs. We got chatting, so I made her a cup of tea. I hope you don't mind." I looked at the dark-haired woman on the sofa, drinking tea from my cup, and nodded. Georgia was a sociable idiot with no understanding of when not to be herself. I wasn't going to lament her for it now. It was her coping. "Of course. Hi, Natalia. What flat do you live in?" I tried my very best to be polite. I would have discussed not bringing people into my home mid-tragedy with Georgia after she had left. Then I would be neighbourly. But until then I'd be neighbourly. "Flat 71. It's so nice to meet you. You have a lovely home," Natalia responded. Her lips curled at the corners into a smile that wasn't replicated by her eyes or the rest of her facial expression. She looked at me smugly, with full knowledge that I was aware of the implications of what she had just said. The rules. The flat number. Every now and then someone will knock at your door, claiming to live in one of these flats and ask to borrow some sugar. They will seem entirely average, but you must shut and lock the door immediately. I installed 2 extra security bolts to avoid these fuckers. I don't like to swear at my age, but they really are fuckers. Prue's warning echoed in my mind, and I couldn't take my eyes off Natalia. Something really was off about her. I looked at Georgia and sat on the sofa next to her and noticed her sweating. Weird, okay. I think they've got a bit of continuity issue here. Anyone in the UK knows it's been hot for a few days, but this was beyond the ambient temperature. Her entire body was dripping. Suddenly, she began to pant. Natalia's eyes were locked to mine, like the window cleaner's had been. Nothing happened before with the cleaner, except this time the rule had been broken. She was already in the flat. Georgia started to scream as her skin blistered and charred. Her hair fell from her scalp as the skin flaked and melted away from every inch of her. She was being burnt alive without a flame in sight. She scratched frantically at her melting face, digging into exposed raw flesh. The sound a person makes when they're burning alive is like no other. That will never leave me. I screamed and screamed, but no one came to the door. I tried to grab my phone to call the postman Ian, but the wooden surface I had set it down on burned my fingers to the touch and forced me to recoil. She was going to set the whole flat alight. My actions need to be quicker than a phone call. I grabbed the largest knife I had set down on the side earlier when weaponizing. The handle blistered in my fingers instantly, but I didn't care. I needed to get her out and needed to help Georgia if I could. I ran towards the dark-haired lady, sweating and dripping from the brow the closer I got, and plunged the knife into Natalia's throat. She gripped it and fell to the floor. She didn't bleed like a normal human. Her insides were black. She was still moving. I figured it probably wouldn't be long before she stood right back up and tried again. So I dragged her into the hallway, ready to bolt the door. As we reached the entrance of the corridor, one of the cats was waiting, hissing at her semi-conscious body. I caught her eyes fixate on it as I dumped her on the floor and grabbed the cat and pulled him inside, wincing as its skin caused more burns on my lower arms. Shut the door and watched through the peephole. She got up and held her hand to the wound, cauterizing it and walking off towards the lift as if she hadn't been injured at all. It sounds awful. Oh. I'd dropped the cat by that point, but every bit of naked skin it had touched throbbed and burned for at least an hour. Georgia hadn't been as lucky as Natalia with injury recovery. I anonymously called an ambulance for her. I couldn't believe it, but she was still breathing. She was badly burned, and her life wouldn't be the same again. But she was alive, and for that I was grateful. It sounds awful, but I left her at the park across the road from the building with no phone or ID. She's my best friend, and I want to be there. But if I own up to involvement in the injuries that bad, they'll suspect me. If I lose the already slim chance that Jamie might be savable, it doesn't mean I don't care about Georgia, but she's alive. I won't believe Jamie isn't until I see it. So now I'm alone again, in the flat, conflicted about what to do. I want to leave so badly, but this was mine and Jamie's first home together. If he's alive and I can save him, then I want it to be here for him to come back to. And if he's dead and the postman is right, then I don't know if I can leave his memory behind. There's only one thing I think could help me right now. So tonight I'm going to do some research, hunt down the address, and tomorrow morning I'm going to visit Prudence Hemmings. There we go. Right. In 10 minutes, we have got some Cyborgs live stream. We're going to go over cryptid and stuff. So that should be fun. Have I got a short story? I don't know if I've actually got one that would be 10 minutes. Long. Oh, that's not that long. Probably not 10 minutes, though. G, you know. Okay. So this is a by G. This is GPT. Brainless got hang on. More the internet. There we go. Right. In a bustling city, there was an old abandoned building that had been left to decay for years. It was rumoured to be haunted by the ghost of its former inhabitants, who had died in a fire that had burned the building to the ground. One night, a group of friends decided to explore the abandoned building. They broke in through a boarded-up window and began to explore the dark and eerie corridors. As they made their way deeper into the building, they began to hear strange noises and whispers. Suddenly, one of the friends screamed and pointed to a figure standing at the end of the hallway. The figure was shrouded in darkness and seemed to be staring right at them. The friends panicked as they tried to run, but the figure began to chase after them. As they ran through the maze-like corridors, the figure seemed to be getting closer and closer. They finally reached the stairs, but the figure was right behind them. In their haste to escape, one of the friends tripped and fell down the stairs, injuring themselves. The others tried to help their friend up, but the figure was upon them. It was then that they realized the figure was not a ghost, but a deranged homeless man who had taken up residence in the abandoned building. He had been driven insane by years of isolation and had turned to violence to protect his new home. The friends managed to escape with their lives, but they were forever scarred by the experience. They never spoke of it again, but they knew that the abandoned building held more than just ghosts. It held a dangerous and deadly secret. Ooh. I mean, good for their first attempt at a scary story. I mean, come on. Did very well for an auto-generated story. It had the elements of the twist of not a ghost, something else. It had the chase. It had the actual, like, someone's chasing me, I'm gonna fall. Like, it literally took all the key components that tend to make a horror movie and condensed it down into a short story, like, very literally though, but still, that's actually pretty good for it. I wonder though, like, interesting to get into a discussion about the efficacies of a chat generated horror story, and like, because the way you are prompted, it will never make it the same way twice. So is that really like your story? Could you sell it? I don't know. But it is 10:30 and it is time for Slim Stream. So let's all go over there. The link has been dropped and it is time for me to go. So bye everyone. See you when I next see you. Well, apart from the next stream, but you know what I mean. Bye.